So guys, I got an '04 Chevy Suburban here, 6.0. And the issue, it has a really interesting issue. When you crank this, you'll hear like the engine picks up speed and slows down. But every time it sits overnight, like you come home from work, you shut it off. Next morning you go to start it, it'll go to start and it'll like sound like it's like starving for air and almost stall, and then the RPM goes up and then it does this and it'll do it for like 2 to 3 seconds. Sometimes it will stall, and it gets worse the colder it gets outside. When it's above like 80, you don't have this problem. When it gets cooler, it does this. The customer brought it to me like a year ago for this issue. Couldn't figure it out. He had put a new throttle body on from GM, stuff like that, and I kept thinking it was like a sensor issue. And like I did a relative compression on it, looked good. I didn't have a pulse sensor back then. So this time he brought it because the brake lines blew. And I figured I'd mess around with it since I'd have it for a few days. And I actually figured it out thanks to the help of Nicholson and Brandon Steckler. I got a lot of hours invested in this because I was trying to figure it out. And in 2 days, we figured it out. And I'll walk you guys through what we did. So here, I'm going to crank this. Oh, another thing though, is in the morning, if it does that, you drive it to work, you let it sit for like 8 hours or 10 hours while you're at work, come out, it'll be fine. It only does it the next morning when it sits overnight. So here, I'm going to try to crank this. I'm going to show you what it sounds like. I have the injectors disabled. I pulled the fuses. You can hear like the engine RPM changing. So what we're going to do is, we're going to put a pulse sensor on. Well, not a pulse. We're going to do a relative compression. I'm going to show you guys that. So I'm going to put you guys on my tripod. Let's bring you guys up here. I'm just going to walk you through everything that... Sorry about that, guys. I'm just going to walk you guys through everything that we've done the past couple days. Let's move you in. Bring this over. We'll hook the amp clamp up so we get a relative compression. Guess I'll move you guys in front. Move you guys over here. Let you see the scope. Hopefully the glare ain't too bad. Let's see, let's set this up. View, layout 2. So here we go. We'll look at the scope. We'll zoom in a little bit. There you go. So now I'm going to crank it. Hopefully the sound doesn't get all messed up. I'm going to stop it after every test in case the sound gets messed up, so we don't have it the whole time. Oh, you know, I need to make sure my amp clamp's on. Let's see. My amp clamp's around the starter wire. Let me make sure filtering. Oh, we don't need to AC couple this. Let's keep filtering on. So we're synced off ignition coil 1. I don't know if you guys can see that. We're on 1 right there. So, I don't know if you guys can see that. It's actually more pronounced today than it was any other day. zoom out. But you can see it goes up and down, up and down. But you don't have any that are like super higher than the other ones. So now, what we did after this, we hooked the pulse sensor up to the intake. So what I did was I pulled the PCV line. Put a little cap in it. And then we put the pulse sensor you guys couldn't see me. Let's turn this on. I forgot to zoom you guys out. So what we did was we pulled the PCV line off right here. I put a cap in it. And we put our pulse sensor on the intake. So now we got our pulse sensor hooked up, and I'll zoom you guys back in on the scope. I set this to, I believe it was a 2-volt scale. Could be wrong, we might have to come back and change it. Let's see, cursor, no, not cursor. Setup, view, layout, 3. Okay, so now we got our pulse sensor hooked up. Let's see what we got with that. I think we have to change our scaling. So we'll go back, we'll do this again. Go 5-volt scale. I think it was actually on 5 volts before. Let's try this again. So here we go, this is what we got. If you look, you can see like consistent pulls, but you got this, where the pressure was able to go up in the intake manifold. So then after that, we moved to the dipstick tube. Let's zoom this out. Here we go. So now we took our pulse sensor off of here. Take our cap back out. And all we do is pull the dipstick tube out, or the dipstick out. And we put it at the pulse sensor. And you always want to suspend the pulse sensor because it'll pick up vibrations. So there you go, that's what we did. we did that. So now we'll record this off the dipstick tube. I think we can go down to 2 volts on this, and we'll see what kind of changes we get there. I don't think I had a good connection on my pulse sensor. Let's try. Let's see if we tap this. Let's see, why is this not showing up? Let me try cranking again, see if it shows up this time. We have no pulse showing up. Well guys, I'm gonna have to stop it here and see why my pulse sensor ain't working now. Okay guys, sorry about that. It was actually the scope that stopped. I had to turn the scope off and turn it back on. Let's see if we can set this up here. And we'll just move you guys over a little bit. There we go. Hopefully the light glare ain't too bad. Try cranking this again. Okay, so we're going to have to go down in our scaling, see how low it is. So we'll move this down to, let's go down to a 2 volt scale. Try this. We'll go down even farther, we'll go down to a 1 volt scale. So there you guys can see. You can see some pulses coming from the crankcase. Nothing huge. The conclusion was that that was due to the engine changing speed, why the pulses changed in there, because I believe if you had like a cylinder that the ring was bad, you'd have a lot more of a pressure spike, but they're all pretty consistent. It's just the engine RPM's changing. So now, on the last big test we did to figure out where to go, is we moved the pulse sensor to the exhaust pipe. So let me grab this stuff real quick. So this is what I did. We took the pulse sensor, I clamped it in the exhaust pipe like that. Ran the tube, the hose off the tube, but you gotta clamp this so it doesn't flop around. And then I hung the pulse sensor off the tire. So that's all I did. I just slid this down inside the tread right there, sideways, just so it would just hang. And then I connected this to my scope using my test drive leaves, which I'll grab and set right up real quick. Just give me a second to run these around. We'll leave this on a 1-volt scale. Again, I'll zoom down in. So now we'll look at this, hopefully didn't mess up again. There we go, we got our exhaust pulses. Let me change the scaling, we'll go down to 500 millivolts. We'll look at these exhaust pulses. So here's our exhaust pulses. You can see they're not consistent. We got this big one that drops down here. So now what we did after that is we analyzed the captures. So here I'll show you what we came up with. Let's see. Hopefully this will pick it up okay. So here we got our relative compression. I believe this is with our intake pool, the intake pool, and our sink. So we're sinking off one. This is a like a cylinder chart, tells you when it's on compression, power stroke, exhaust, or intake stroke. And cylinder 7, right here, cylinder 7 It's coming up on its compression stroke right here. So what we did was we looked at another capture right here, and we also had some valve sealing issues that compounded this thing. Let's see. Yeah, like right here, the deep pulls on 6 and 5. So now what we did is we went in cylinder 7, and we'll do that real quick. And we did it with a pressure transducer, screwed it in cylinder 7. I still have it in cylinder 7. I don't know if you guys can see the compression gauge coming out down here with my transducer on the end. Let's see. There we go. Got it right here. I'm going to hook that up, and then we'll look at the pressure from that cylinder, and we compared it. We compared it to the intake pulse. So I'm going to set this all back up so that we can do this. So we'll quick change this. So what I did was, I actually have one of these like splitters, and if you just bend this ever so slightly, you can actually fit it in both the ports. Just don't push it all the way in because you might damage them. But it fits fine like that, and we can look at the pressure sensor on 2 different scalings this way. Some people make adapters. You could also use leads that came off of it, but I just did this quick. Let's see. Do 5. See this first scale, we'll do 250. Second one we won't. This next one we'll do the pulse sensor. I go grab it real quick. Almost knocked you guys over. Let's put this pulse sensor back in. Line the pulse sensor back up. I really hope this video turns out good, because I think this is a pretty amazing case study. I haven't seen anybody record this like this before. This problem drove me insane. Let's see. Pulse sensor. Go back to 5 volts. So now I'm going to crank the engine again, and we'll watch the scope. Oh, you know what? I want to cap that. Cap PCV again. I don't know where I set my cap. So there we go, got it capped off. Crank it again real quick. So now, something's not right here. Oh, is one of my scaling? Oh, my scale's inverted. Hold on a second, guys. Sorry about that. There we go. So now, I didn't crank it long enough, but this will do. So now, you guys can see that this is cylinder 7 coming up on compression, and right here we should not have that. And if you look when the compression peaks come up, our intake pressure's coming up right there on the pulse sensor. Bring it over to the laptop and we'll look at this. So here we go. Look at that. So our cylinder comes up on compression, our intake's going up, and then right here is the exhaust valve coming up, and then there's that little spike there. So the exhaust valve is opening late and it's closing early. That's how you get that pressure. And I guess there's really only two ways that could happen on here, and that's a camshaft that's worn, or a lifter, and most likely it's a lifter. So if I take this valve cover off, I'll probably be able to push it down. So this is a major shout out to Brandon and his classes, and Michael Nicholson for the pulse sensor. Hopefully you guys like it and find it interesting. See you later. Okay guys, I want to add something here. We also think that the intake valve might be leaking, and that's what's causing this rise up when number 7's coming up on compression. So I wanted to add that in here, but there's a lot of issues going on in here with like valves randomly sealing and not sealing because our waveforms kept changing. It's been really complicated, but I got the truck pretty much back together. I got to quick do an evap test on it because it has an evap leak, and then I'm going to start it up. Hopefully it'll cause the issue, so I can add that in the video. So guys, the Suburban's been sitting for a few hours. I'm going to try and start it, see if you guys can hear the lifter noise. When I first started it and brought it out here, it sounded like a train. There you go. You can hear it. Hopefully the camera picks it up good. It sounds like the valves are rattling. It's all valve train noise. Let me pop the hood. See if you guys can hear it. Oh, and I also found the purge valve was stuck open again. I replaced it twice. I checked it. Let's see if you guys can hear this. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not, but the rattling's starting to go away already. But yeah, it pretty much confirms that it's lifters without taking anything apart. And there also, when I first started to bring it out here, there was also misfire counters on 4 and 5, and I think 7. And then they went, and then 7 stopped like pretty much instantly, and then 4 and 5 they stayed there. And then once it ran for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, they went away. So that's probably those valves not sealing right, like Brandon had pointed out. Also, it doesn't start hard now that the purge solenoid's disconnected. I have it disconnected right now, plugged. But I didn't see any debris in it. Like, I blew it backwards. I didn't find anything in it, so I have no idea why it failed. I'm going to check the charcoal canister then and make sure that there's not anything that is coming out and going through the lines. So hopefully you guys like this. See you later.